Well, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I thought I would pop in here. I know I've been missing for a long time. It's been probably a month or so. It's been very busy trying to get things caught up, struggling for time as usual, and I actually had to drive to Alabama and back over the last couple of weeks and to take care of some family matters. And so I've been kind of among the missing for a while, but it appears that our world is being reshaped right in front of our eyes right now, which should not come as a surprise to us based on what Psalm 75 tells us, that it's God who takes one down and puts another one up. If you are familiar with my book, you would understand that we are living in a time right now that has been prophesied, especially in the Psalms. It's the Psalms that puts everything together on a timeline. So we understand from Ezekiel 38, 39, for instance, about the Gog Magog war. There's Isaiah 17, Isaiah 18, but to actually put that on a timeline and understand when these things are going to take place, that's where the Psalms come in. And the Psalms of Ascent and the Psalms of Asaph primarily give us that timeline. And knowing that 2024 was going to be a year of war, and that many things were going to take place, we've been talking about now for almost a year in our teachings and studies that we've done here at the shop. I'm by myself, by the way. It's Sunday afternoon. We didn't have a meeting on Friday evening, like I had hoped to. Our dear sister Ruth, who is very faithful in coming, she had a heart attack, and we've been praying for her, and I believe she's okay now. I need to catch up and find out how she is, how she's doing in her recovery. Like I said, I had to go out of town, and I've kind of lost touch with a lot of things, but anyway, we've been praying for her, and I do believe that she's doing better. And there's just been so much going on lately, and then with Thanksgiving and so forth, so we've missed our Friday evening studies. But we are going to start back. I have been writing, I have been studying, praying, meditating in God's Word. There are some new things that I do want to share. I've been writing. I had 26 or 7 pages for a new study that I want to do soon, and realized obviously that is just way too much. I mean, it's just too much to swallow. And so I've actually been working on trying to reduce that down to something a little bit more tolerable, and I believe I have it down to 12 or 13 pages. And so we may do that this coming week, or we may do it the following week. So we'll see. But anyway, what I really wanted to talk about briefly today is how our world is being reshaped right in front of our eyes right now, as I mentioned. And we obviously should have expected this, and wasn't really sure that it would be Syria. But I'll be honest with you, I've been trying to figure out, okay, from the Psalms and Ezekiel 38 and 39 and other scriptures, we here, as we've been evaluating all of these scriptures and the timeline that's been encrypted in the Psalms. Again, if you don't know, if you haven't read my book, this is my book. I would suggest that you pick up a copy and read it and leave it behind, because it's very important. Not making money on the book. That's not really a thing. Don't really care about that. It wasn't written for that purpose. But it is very important, and if you read it, you will understand a lot more of what we're talking about. Also, if you go back and watch the previous videos, watch those, and you'll have a better understanding. But all of these events that have transpired recently, they are all geared towards reshaping our world. It seems rather quickly. They all seem very scripted to me. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks that way, but it seems like they've been very well scripted. It seems that there is an entity behind the scenes that is calling these shots. It seems to me, and of course God is ultimately in control. I mean, that goes without saying. But is he allowing the enemy to well, obviously he is. He's allowing the enemy to put pieces in place that God, of course, has full knowledge is going to happen, and to orchestrate the events that we know, what we see in prophecy. All eyes right now are on, well, always on Israel, always on Jerusalem, but obviously right now also on Damascus. And we know from Isaiah 17 that Damascus will be a ruinous heap. I kind of got a little sidetracked because what I was trying to establish a few minutes ago was that as we've seen what I believe is the Gog Magog war, not the final invasion, but the war, as we've seen that being played out over the last year plus now, starting in October, on October 7th, 2023, which was to be based on the Psalms of Ascent, a year of distress, and 2024, a year of war, and then the rapture. It's encrypted in there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it happens in 2024, because its sister psalm, which is Psalm 76, actually on the timeline would go until May or June in that time frame. So we're anxiously awaiting the Lord's return. However, we don't know the day or the hour. And what I've realized too is that these psalms, I believe it's almost more like a time release capsule. So I'll get into that some next week. I can't take too much time with that, but just because it was written in, let's say, the psalm that matches 2023 doesn't mean that the things that are written in there or that are encrypted in there are only going to pertain to that year. For instance, we realize that in Psalm 75, I believe it is, it's God who takes one down and puts another up. Okay, that's been going on like really, really crazy as God is kind of putting his chessboard together. And again, I believe a lot of that is allowing Satan to put his chessboard together. But of course, God is ultimately in control and allows things or disallows things. Unfortunately, I keep getting a little bit sidetracked, so I'm going to try to circle back. I've been trying to figure out for a few months now how logistically, how realistically, a bunch of nations that are listed in Ezekiel 38, how they will be able to amass somewhere near Israel's borders to attack Israel without Israel knowing it. In, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, that would make sense. They could basically hide. There wouldn't necessarily be television cameras everywhere. But the events of the last 11 days, as Syria has fallen, I think are, I think that's the answer. I don't know how it's going to play out, but basically Syria has fallen. I'd like to kind of offer this. Just stop and think about it. How quickly this happened. Number one, it happened in 11 days, and that's very prophetic because the number 11 in God's kingdom is a corrupted or an incomplete government. It is an Antichrist number. I pick up on these things. Just as it had been 50 years since Israel had been attacked on the Yom Kippur War in 73, and then 50 years later, almost to the day, I think it may have been, on October 7th, they were attacked again. 50 relates to a Jubilee and so forth, but it also, to me, it goes back to Psalm 50, which of course is if you look at Psalm 50 and you really meditate on it and you look at it, you read it upside down, you see the tribulation period in sequence but backwards. And then also there are 6, and all this is in my book, and we've talked about this in videos before, but there are 6 very specific Antichrist verses in Psalm 50. So again, I look at these numbers and figure out what God is trying to say kind of below the surface on some of this. But so I've been trying to figure out how in the world all these armies are going to come together. I think that we're witnessing right now is a lot of deception. I'd like to point out the fact that just a few weeks ago that Erdogan of Turkey that he was calling for all Muslim nations to come together to attack Israel. And he basically was giving them, not an ultimatum, but basically saying that it's their duty. And here we have a Turkey, let's say Turkish government kind of behind the scenes funding these rebels. Erdogan comes out just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, and he's basically saying that they're going to take over Damascus, which happened. I believe there's a lot of deception going on. I believe that this is all planned. I believe all of this is scripted. I believe that the people, the elites as we call them, from the World Economic Forum are fully in this. Remember, there's that video, and maybe I'll play it here if I can find it. I have it on my computer somewhere. But where we have Klaus Schwab dropping names basically at a meeting, telling a lot of these world leaders, or telling us who some of these world leaders are that are all involved and were, like young up and coming global leaders and all this kind of stuff. And of course in that is Putin, Macron, Trudeau. We know that Biden was part of it. He wasn't a young global leader, but that like his slogan, Build Back Better, that all comes from the World Economic Forum.
And I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I'm here with the president, who is a young global leader. But what is important?
So basically, the globalists have been part of this, and I believe that there is an entity, we'll just say, that is running the show, making the decisions, the hidden entity, which I believe is the Antichrist. I believe he is alive and well. I believe that he is dictating behind the scenes a lot of these things, and ultimately behind that is Satan, and ultimately above that is God. So he's allowing these things to play out. And of course, like I said earlier, he knows exactly how this is going to play out. God will not be fooled, and he will not be mocked. So anyway, think about this also, how easily the whole country of Syria, the government, basically just disappeared. It doesn't make any sense. Think about the fact that Iran and Russia, who were friends of Assad, how they just backed off basically. There might have been a few little skirmishes, but really nothing to speak of. It just doesn't make any sense. It's really interesting to me that when you see the videos that the people who are the rebels, we'll just call them the rebels, that they were going from city to city in convoys, in columns. You don't think that Assad, Iran, or Russia could have expended a couple of fighter jets or a few missiles or some drones to just wipe out these convoys? They were all like in groups. It just doesn't make sense unless you realize that this is all scripted. Now, how it's all going to come together, I have no idea. But I know that Damascus is in trouble. I don't know if that's now. I don't know if that's later in the tribulation. In my book, I kind of, just based on some of the interconnected words and phrases, I believe that it's possible that comes later. But it could also be the trigger point it could be the hook in the jaw. Who knows? So I'm not trying to figure that out. I'm just watching. Jesus instructed us to watch, and I'm watching. And since I understand pretty well the timeline that God encrypted in the Psalms, when I see world events happen and see how they're reshaping our current world, I can kind of discern what that means for Israel. You know, obviously, they're saying this has nothing to do with Israel. In fact, I think it's really funny, and maybe right here I will put up a news article that I found online where basically they were interviewing some of these rebels, and they were saying that they love Israel. Now, you have to understand that these rebels are Islamic extremists. They are leftover Al-Qaeda and ISIS. For them to say, oh, we love Israel, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. If that's not deception, I don't know what is. That goes against all of their principles. It just doesn't make any kind of sense. So right there, my little antennas went up, and I'm like, yeah, right, sure you love Israel. Yeah, so anyway, I'll just leave that there. You can research some of these things for yourself, but I think we're going to see pretty soon, we're going to see this continue to take shape. I think this is a perfect opportunity to create a lot of chaos and then have a lot of different, you know, we've got Iraqis now moving in, we've got supposedly Iranians coming, we've got displaced people who used to be in Syria, now they've been in other places like Turkey, they're moving back in. This is going to be a mixed bag, and it is going to be basically like lighting a fire just north of Israel. And of course we know from Ezekiel 38 that it's from the north, from the far north, but there's a lot of countries that are going to come as a confederacy, going to come against Israel, just as Erdogan called for a few weeks ago, and now magically we're seeing this happen. It just seems a little bit coincidental to me that these things don't have anything to do with each other. And then you've got these guys actually saying, oh, we love Israel, thank you Israel for bombing Hezbollah and all this. You got to remember, they hate Israel. It's just part of who they are. This goes back to Jacob and Esau. You know, before that, Isaac and Ishmael. They don't love Israel. There's no way that they love Israel. These are Sunni, the rebels are Sunni Muslims, and that's who Hamas and the Palestinians are. They're Sunnis. Do you really think that they're going to side with Israel over their brethren, Hamas and the Palestinians? It just doesn't make any kind of sense. So I would say be very aware, be watching this. And so okay, we'll leave it at that. The other thing that I think has been interesting since I've been away is, you know, Trump, of course, won the presidency. He's not in there yet. A lot can still happen, especially with war. I mean, we're in the time of wars and rumors of war. Every day there's another threat, it's crazy. The rumors of war, even more so than the wars that are going on. But unlike 2020, it seems like this was an easy victory. And it seems like the Democrats didn't put up much of a fight. And they didn't do a whole lot of cheating. And I've been thinking that's awfully suspicious. It just seems so different from 4 years ago that it's almost as if they knew. Now I'm not talking about just the Democrats. I'm talking about the globalists, basically, who are partially behind the scenes running things. It just seems to me like they came in, they had their 4 years to overrun our country with illegal immigrants and basically screw everything up, and then dump it in somebody else's lap. It just seems, again, too coincidental. And then it's sort of like, okay, no, we're good. Trump won again. You know, this is the guy that they seem to just absolutely hate. Now, what all of this means, I'm not really sure, but I do know, again, from the Psalms that we should have expected that God is going to take certain people down and He's going to put certain people up, or at least allow them to be taken down and put up. He says it's specifically him that does it. So he is positioning all of the pieces on the chessboard right now, and he wants us to seek his wisdom. He wants us to watch. Jesus said many times to watch, and we're supposed to be watching and praying. We need to know what we're watching for, and as I have pointed out a few times now, that I fully believe that Luke 17, where Jesus is talking about the vultures and the dead bodies, I believe that that goes to Ezekiel 39, verse 4, and then a few verses later, it continues in Ezekiel 39. But I believe that this war is going to get really hot. I believe that possibly from Lebanon and from Syria now that there are going to be troops amassing. Maybe now that there's sort of maybe a little bit of a blackout in Syria as far as television crews and things like that, while there's so much chaos, that these troops could start coming in. I don't know when, but I smell a rat in all of this. And if you agree that all of this seems a little bit too coincidental, please let me know in the comments. And I'm just praying right now, Lord, that, number one, I was praying at church today. There's so many people, so many Christians too, and innocent children that get caught up in these conflicts, and it breaks my heart. Give them, Lord, the strength to endure. Give them the strength to get through this time. They're caught in harm's way. We pray, Lord, that you would protect them. But ultimately, just like the Bible describes, that we all go through bad things, and we need the strength to endure and stay faithful. And so that's my prayer for all of those, and that God would give them supernatural protection, because he can certainly do that. So anyway, that's kind of what I've got for today. I just wanted to make a few comments about what's going on in the world, and let you guys know that I didn't fall off the face of the earth. I think I mentioned a month or so ago just how things have changed here. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of things that are shaping up to be a struggle financially, but you know what, God's good. He always provides, so I'm not really worried about that. But do I have to work more and harder and try to get more things done? Yes, because that's my responsibility. Okay, I was just about to go, and then I was looking at some of my notes that I just kind of scribbled earlier today as I was just thinking about all of this. And I wanted to read this. My handwriting as I'm scribbling is really bad, so if this is a struggle, bear with me. I wrote here, in context of Bible prophecy. Okay. I wrote this out of memory. This wasn't, I didn't have my Bible open at the time. I wrote Psalm 75 explains to us that exaltation doesn't come from the east, west, or south. Now that's obviously very cryptic, but which one's left out of that? It's the north. What that means to me, as one who is, at least to the best of my ability and through God's grace, have decoded much of these Psalms, that means to me that exaltation, as it says, doesn't come from the east, west, or south. That means that exaltation comes from the north. Okay, now that doesn't really make any sense on the surface, but when you think about it, again, if you read my book, you'll understand this a little bit more. This exaltation, Israel is going to be exalted. God is going to be exalted. Once, you read Ezekiel 38 and you'll understand, this exaltation will come from the north. So it's not that they're coming from the north to exalt, but the result of it will be that God will have this victory and Israel will also be victorious in this. And that will be the exaltation that I believe that the Antichrist is going to ride in on. I believe that the enemy fully knows the time that he's living in. I believe that the enemy understands these prophecies better than we do. And he is waiting for this moment to happen, orchestrating this moment to happen, so that his guy, his man, his Antichrist, his false Messiah can be revealed. I don't know if he's going to come riding in on a spaceship to save the day. I don't know, we're hearing a lot about all these UAPs and UFOs and stuff lately. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. I gave a lot of evidence in my book that I believe that he was born in some way in probably 1998 or 1999. I believe that the enemy, Satan, that he knows that for him to be a Messiah figure, he needs to be the real Messiah figure that he's trying to bring about, needs to be 30 years old when he takes control, which would be in 2028, 2029. And then 3.5 years later, basically, Jesus will return, and that will be right around 2032. So that's kind of the thumbnail sketch of the timeline of what we're ahead of. But if you do a little simple math, you'll realize that means that 2025 is the big year. 2025, probably in the fall, it would have to be in the fall, is when the tribulation period starts. So obviously the rapture needs to be between now and then, and I believe there has to be a pretty big gap between the rapture and the start of the tribulation period, because there's a lot that has to happen in that time. So anyway, again, go back and watch some of the previous videos. I explain a lot more and you'll understand. Of course, if you read the book, you'll understand. Let me interject here also that it seems that just like in 2021, I believe it was, when the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, how we left billions of dollars of war material and equipment behind. It appears that Russia, probably Iran as well, has done the exact same thing. So in an effort to get out of Dodge really fast, they have left everything behind so that others can come in and utilize that equipment. Just a couple of months ago, I showed a video here of the Afghans using, was it Taliban basically, using all this equipment now that we left, that the Biden administration left in Afghanistan. And so that seems to be a repeat. So in an interesting twist and turn of events, it appears that we and Russia are heavily arming our enemies and Israel's enemies. That's the key. These are Israel's enemies. And so now, whereas in Afghanistan, that's a little ways away from Israel. However, now all of this equipment is right at their doorstep. And so we'll just see how that plays out. But these are all things to kind of keep an eye on and just stay focused on the fact that there is chaos literally at their northern border, and I smell Ezekiel 38 all over this. Of course, I believe that since October 7th we have been in the Ezekiel 38 war. It just hasn't been the big push and the big invasion. The storm, so to speak, hasn't come yet. But it is on its way. And I believe this is a huge step forward to making that happen. And so anyway, so basically I believe that before the dust settles after God has this victory and the vultures are circling and feeding, sorry to be gross, on the dead bodies, more than likely in the Golan Heights, because we know it'll be in the mountain regions, that, according to Jesus in Luke 17, coupled with Ezekiel 39, verse 4, I believe that's when the rapture will take place. Again, there's no way to know what day that's going to be or what hour that's going to be. But Jesus said to watch, and now I believe we know what we're watching for. I believe that this was something that he had sealed up until now, and now we can actually start to understand some of these things. He's sort of taken the blinders off. You don't have to buy any of this. You don't have to believe any of this, but just at least keep it in the back of your mind that this is possibly what we're looking for. We're not doing mathematics and we're not doing formulas to try to figure out when Jesus is coming back, because I don't believe that works. But just based on what Jesus' words were and what he said, we can have a pretty good idea of what we're looking for. And we're seeing this play out right now. So the other thing that I wanted to mention here in closing is that I keep having this idea that Syria, as I've described, this chaos and everything, and how they're going to get all of these troops and equipment on Israel's northern border without the world basically realizing this is happening, is that Syria may just simply be like a Trojan horse left at Israel's northern doorstep, so to speak. It seems to me like this is the way that they, whoever they are, have determined to make this happen. Because, again, we understand from Bible prophecy, this isn't about Syria, this isn't about Lebanon, this isn't about Libya or Egypt or any other country around there. This is always about Jerusalem and Israel. Israel is the stumbling block, Jerusalem. So when you are looking at events happening in the Middle East, even if it seems like it's one, Muslim group fighting another Muslim group, at their heart, they want to destroy Israel. They want to wipe them off the map. That is not just Iran that wants that. It's many of them, especially after the war that has ensued since October 7th. They all claim that Israel is genocidal and all this kind of stuff, and they love to believe that. Although Israel has done more to protect citizens and civilians of their enemies, quite frankly, than any other country ever has. But they still get labeled. So anyway, just understand, be watching, be praying, because there are a lot of people that are caught in harm's way. Please be praying and also, take action, put feet to your faith, and, understand that time is short and there are a lot of people that still need to be saved. If you can give to ministries that help get people saved and understand the times we're living in, please do so. And if you can get out and talk to your friends and your neighbors and all those that you meet, it's kind of time to get out of our comfort zone. That doesn't seem comfortable all the time, but we're running out of time. The harvest season is definitely coming to a close. Unless God hits the pause button, but you know what? Even if He does, and this whole thing is transplanted 10 years later, which God is sovereign, He can do that. You still haven't lost anything. You've only gained treasure in heaven. So anyway, God bless you. Thank you for listening, and we should be starting back having a few more teachings here over the next few weeks, and right as I'm finishing, my phone's ringing. So anyway, God bless. Take care.